he voice-cacked mid-sentence. Slicing, though the air like a whip, his expression was frozen, eyes wide, breath caught somewhere between shock and fury, as he had just bet his life on something, and it was all for Aeon. A revelation that hit Selena like thunder. Her voice trembled, half outrage, half confusion, as if her brain itself refused to process the information. And then Aeon finally asked in a stunned whisper, his tone low, nearly inaudible. He did what? His mind had officially stopped working. It was like someone had upended a bag of punctuation in his head. 1,000 question marks flying in all directions. He thought to himself, is the elder lying? But that didn't make sense. Why would a saint, not to say a dignified dragon saint, lie? But then again, why would that guy, that bastard, do something like this? And he was still reeling when Selena moved, her actions a blur as he struggled to wrap his head around the shocking turn of events, his thoughts still racing with questions and doubts, as he tried to make sense of the unbelievable situation that had just unfolded before him. The saintess, who had been standing by his side, suddenly turned and grabbed him by the collar, causing his voice to break and his eyes to widen in shock, his entire body stiffening as if struck by lightning, his head snapping towards her in disbelief, mouth falling open as he faced Selena, sweet, noble, angelic Selena, now inches from his face, her golden eyes burning like twin suns dipped in ice, and he tried to ask what she was doing, but didn't even get to finish the question, as she spoke in a voice that dropped several octaves, slow and quiet and venomously cold, saying if he failed to get recognized by the dragon heart or whatever, she would kill him before the dragon did, her grip on his collar tightening, leaving Aeon blinking, his brain short-circuited, wondering what the hell was going on, why she, of all people, would act so rude, and suddenly, wasn't she the gentle one, the saintess, the composed light in darkness? And what about those cursing words? Is a saintess even allowed to use them? Still, her words hit him like a slap to the soul. He stared at her, stunned, not afraid, but absolutely bewildered. That wasn't just anger in her tone. It was something else. Something deeper. He frowned, trying to make sense of her sudden, murderous declaration. He narrowed his eyes slightly, a sudden realization dawning on him. Wait a minute, he thought to himself. Is she saying this because of that purple-haired bastard's contact? Because if I fail, he dies. But then that didn't make any damn sense. She should be the one who hates him the most. Hell, she ruined his life. Why would she care if he... He paused. No, there had to be more. He looked at her, really looked at the trembling edge of her lip, the way her breath caught ever so slightly. Wait, could it be? Was she worried about him? The thought made his heart skip a beat. As he pondered the possibility, his mind racing with questions, he couldn't help but wonder if there was more to her concern than met the eye, and the idea that she might actually be invested in his well-being was a prospect that left him both intrigued and bewildered. No way, she wasn't like that. She wasn't the type to care. She was a saintess, yes, but not sentimental. She always maintained distance, control, but still, was she just too awkward to show her concern properly? Was this her twisted way of saying don't die? His heart thumped a little harder. That's almost sweet, but almost immediately, logic hit him again. No, no way. That's just wishful thinking. He shook the thought off. As he tried to process the situation, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, she was trying to convey a message, but his rational side quickly took over, dismissing the idea as mere fantasy, and yet the seed of doubt had been planted, leaving him to wonder if he had misjudged her entirely, and if there was more to her stoic exterior than met the eye. But for now, he pushed the thoughts aside, determined not to get caught up in speculation, and instead focused on the reality of the situation, trying to make sense of the confusing emotions that swirled within him as he struggled to reconcile his perception of her with the glimmer of uncertainty that had arisen. And though he tried to shake off the feeling, it lingered, refusing to be silenced, a constant reminder that nothing was as clear-cut as it seemed, and that sometimes the most unlikely possibilities can be the most intriguing. And so, he found himself torn between his desire for clarity and his growing curiosity about the mystery that surrounded her, leaving him to ponder the what-ifs and the maybes that now lingered in his mind, like a lingering whisper that refused to fade away. Selena was never the sweet type, and if anything, she might be worried that she'll die if someone fails. After all, this woman has never been normal. Maybe she's just pissed off from the stress of whatever this whole thing is, and that must be it, he thought to himself, sighing. I was overthinking. She's just scared for herself. Of course. He gave her a tired look. Weird women. I never understand them. He scratched the back of his neck, trying to shrug it all off. He didn't even ask her to come. He told her he'd go alone. But she insisted herself, and now she's angry at him. Still, he smiled a little, forcing some calm into the moment. He let out a tiny sigh, trying to play it cool. Yes, yes. You Saintess, I won't fail. Don't worry, Aeon replied awkwardly, trying to gently lift her hand off his collar with a sheepish smile. But before his fingers could even touch her hand, she said, don't touch me, her tone slicing again. She released his collar herself, but not before giving him a tiny shove. He stumbled slightly more from shock than strength and hastily straightened himself, his pride taking a small hit, though he looked around, very relieved there weren't many people nearby. Maybe she's just mad because of the situation, he told himself, trying to smile again, brushing his long red hair back with one hand. Definitely a mood swing. Better not provoke her any further. Then, as if to confirm his suspicions, she raised the very hand she'd used to grab him and cast a soft golden glow over it with her other hand. A purification spell. His lips twitched, his smile cracked. He looked away, the second-hand embarrassment almost too much to handle. Did she just purify herself after touching me? Meanwhile, he rubbed his chin with a small, amused grin. The old dragon saint didn't say a word. He could have easily commented on the girl's sharp tone, her lack of reverence for the dragon heart, or her casual attitude around him, a spirit of saint-level power. But instead, he simply nodded to himself as if watching a drama unfold in real time. Bet to leave it alone, he thought. This girl feels oddly troublesome. Then he clapped his hands lightly. Well then, if you both are quite done, shall we proceed? Kaindo arched a bow. That crazy bastard might actually die if we delay too long. And while I wouldn't mind, we did sign a blood spirit contract. It'd be impolite to let the fool die over your teenage dramatics. Selena whipped her head toward Aeon with a glare. Then move your legs. What are you waiting for? Walk faster. Why? Yes. Aeon hurried forward, his dignity in shambles, practically tipping over his own feet to keep up. As they walked, he muttered in his head, what the hell is wrong with this woman today? I've never seen her like this. Meanwhile, on the northern side of the chamber, Raziel stood still, his eyes locked with the beast's burning gaze. System, he murmured silently, keeping his posture composed. Show me my stats again. Host, Raziel, alignment, true villain, unredemption, villain rank, F, infamy rating, 0, title, none. Sin resonance, 0%. Attributes, strength, F. Agility, F. Mana, F. Endurance, F. Will, negative. Mental, SS. Charisma, S. Luck, negative. Potential rating, undefined. Analysis inconclusive. Threat level, negligible. Embarrassing as always, the system added dryly, as if unable to help itself. Raziel's eye twitched. Did it really have to add commentary every single time? Still, something felt off. His bow followed. As he stood there, a sudden realization dawned on him, and he mentally asked himself if his mana hadn't been negative before. Similar to Will's, a hint of suspicion creeping into his thoughts, and in response, he was informed that while that was correct, the residual mana he had absorbed within the system's internal space had finally begun to affect his neural pathways, having had sustained exposure to Dark Faction mana, which had allowed his intelligence attribute to stabilize, prompting a slight twitch in Raziel's fingers as a deep-seated desire to scream in cathartic joy blossomed in his chest, though he chose to exhale slowly through his nose instead, recognizing that now wasn't the time for such outbursts. given that he was still in the midst of a potentially deadly confrontation. With his composure gradually returning to his features, he stood up straight, his eyes fixed on the fierce hound still snarling across from him, sparks falling from its breath like embers from a forge. And with a newfound sense of determination, he whispered to himself, "All right then, let's see what I'm really up against," before mentally issuing a command to the system to show him the dog's stats. A vein throbbed near Raziel's temple as he gazed upon the list, his eyes widening in incredulity. For the Phi-hound, a third-rank beast of the elemental beast species, specifically the lesser flame type, boasting physical prowess, had affinity to Phi and heat, and its danger level, relative to the host's strength, was deemed extreme. With behavior that was aggressive, territorial, and prideful, its attributes reading like a laundry list of superiority, with strength at a D, agility at a C, mana or MP at a humble E, endurance at a D, and mental at a dismal F, which led Raziel to blink, then blink again, his mind reeling at the notion that this flaming mutt outclassed him in every measurable way, prompting him to shout internally, his anger and frustration simmering just below the surface as he muttered under his breath, "I am the protagonist of my own story, and I'm getting out-anked by a dog, technically a Phi-hound, a lesser elemental variety." But yes, his voice almost tremulous with resentment, his gaze narrowing, darkening with quiet frustration, as his fingers slowly curled into a fist, and he stood still, silent, and fully guarded. His eyes locked onto the monstrous hound before him, a beast cloaked in heat and menace, the atmosphere between them heavy, like the moments before a thunderclap, and he spoke internally, his voice calm but tightly controlled. "System, what's the primary attack method of this thing?" To which the response was that the Phi-hound's attacks were predominantly physical, with sharp claws and nails imbued with extreme internal heat averaging 800 degrees Celsius, its teeth maintaining a consistent surface temperature between 700 to 1000 degrees Celsius, and additional attacks including headbutts, charge leaps, and body slams, all extremely lethal due to its hardened, blade-like exoskeleton. Raziel's thoughts churned, yet his focus never wavered from the hound's searing gaze. No way, she wasn't like that. She wasn't the type to care. She was a saintess, yes, but not sentimental. She always maintained distance, control, but still, was she just too awkward to show her concern properly? Was this her twisted way of saying, "Don't die"? His heart thumped a little harder. That's almost sweet, but almost immediately, logic hit him again. No way. That's just wishful thinking. He shook the thought off. As he tried to process the situation, he couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, she was trying to convey a message, but his rational side quickly took over, dismissing the idea as mere fantasy, and yet, the seed of doubt had been planted, leaving him to wonder if he had misjudged her entirely, and if there was more to her stoic exterior than met the eye. But for now, he pushed the thoughts aside, determined not to get caught up in speculation, and instead focused on the reality of the situation, trying to make sense of the confusing emotions that swirled within him as he struggled to reconcile his perception of her with the glimmer of uncertainty that had arisen, and though he tried to shake off the feeling, it lingered, refusing to be silenced. A constant reminder that nothing was as clear-cut as it seemed, and that sometimes the most unlikely possibilities can be the most intriguing. And so, he found himself torn between his desire for clarity and his growing curiosity about the mystery that surrounded her, leaving him to ponder the what-ifs and the maybes that now lingered in his mind like a lingering whisper that refused to fade away. As he stood there, a hand emerged from beneath the folds of his sharp tuxedo coat, gripping a dagger in a most unconventional manner, the blade reversed in his grip, the tip pointing towards the ground. His wrist tilted down, fingers coiled with an eerie calm, his stance whispering trap rather than ready, and the hound twitched, its entire frame tensing like a drawn bow. Then Raziel's hand slid the dagger free in the most subtle motion imaginable, and the hound moved, its leap making the ground crack beneath it, lunging with speed, blurring past the eye. Raziel saw the blur, his body not fast enough to react, but his mind already knew it would go for the obvious target, the dagger arm, and he didn't resist. Instead, he extended his arm forward deliberately, as if inviting the attack, and the hound's massive jaws clamped down, causing agony to explode, his tuxedo sleeve burning instantly into ash, revealing scorched flesh beneath, the beast's blistering hot teeth piercing into his skin, sizzling through muscle. Digging down until something halted the bite, the hound's fangs grinding against an unnatural resistance beneath his flesh, a dense, inhuman alloy layered over bone, preventing its jaws from closing fully, like biting into molten steel. And the sound of this gruesome encounter echoed through the air, a haunting crunch that seemed to suspend time itself. Raziel's world had suddenly become a gruesome spectacle, with blood bursting forth from torn flesh, spraying everywhere in a deep crimson arc, as steam hissed off the wound, causing the seared meat to bubble, and his upper arm was bathed in blood, the scent of burnt iron heavy in the air. Yet he didn't flinch, his eyes remaining cold and locked, because the real count was just beginning, and Raziel's gaze didn't waver, his eyes remaining sharp, fixated on the beast locked onto his right arm. The hound's jaw trembled slightly, muscles tightening with primal force as its superheated fangs sank into flesh, steam rising like breath from hell. The pain wasn't gone, but dulled, numbed into something distant, a faint signal buzzing from a broken wire, a tingling reminder that his body had been injured but not overwhelmed, only to remind him, though it was nothing to him, even if he could have felt the pain, he'd been through hell, literally. And just as he expected, the agony was somehow manageable, a numbing buzz that signaled his body's response to the brutal assault, but Raziel's demeanor remained unyielding, frozen in a mask of determination, his eyes locked onto the beast, refusing to yield, his gaze unwavering, as the battle between him and the hound had only just begun, with Raziel's unyielding spirit and unrelenting will to survive, forged in the depths of hell, now put to the ultimate test in a whirlwind of swift movements. The dagger slipped free from his bitten hand, not due to weakness, but rather by deliberate design, as his left hand flashed into motion, catching the falling blade mid-air by the hilt, showcasing his remarkable agility and precision, his body twisting with unnatural grace, akin to a dance mid-performance, before the cold steel of his dagger plunged into the soft, exposed underside of the hound's neck, eliciting a low, guttural growl from the creature, confused and pained, its body jolting, but he was merciless, twisting the blade brutally, severing the pulse of life, and the hound shuddered once, violently, before collapsing, its dead weight slamming into the forest floor with a dull thud, its jaw unlocking, teeth unclenching from his arm, as if even in death it obeyed his will, and blood soaked through his sleeve, dripping steadily from his elbow, and he thought to himself, still just a dog after all. Exhaling calmly, almost disappointed, wrenching the blade free, flicking it to the side with a sharp snap of his wrist, the hound's dark blood spraying in a narrow arc across the dry leaves and cracked roots, muttering to himself, his voice low, almost conversational, as he looked down at the corpse, then to his own arm, shredded tuxedo, seared skin, and a fresh trail of blood, a sight that would have shaken a lesser man, but he merely sighed, his demeanor unwavering in the face of such brutality. The system's voice echoed in his mind, as if sighing through digital static, asking why he didn't fight like a villain is supposed to, and labeling his actions as barbaric, since he hurt himself before his enemy did. To which he coldly replied that he would have fought differently if the system wasn't so useless, while casually binding his right arm with a silk handkerchief from his pocket, explaining that his method was the most efficient way to win, and that fighting head-on would have resulted in more damage, and that unexpected injuries aren't exactly desirable. The system countered that his method would have left him vulnerable if there were more monsters, but he simply stated that there weren't, and that the trial time was already up, and if there were more monsters, he would have figured something out, saying that he calls it using my brain, and after a pause, his expression sharpened into irritation, also mentioning that he's really glad he didn't put all his trust in that obsidian agony skeleton of the system's with the system's critique and his response showcasing a tense and testy exchange between the two, highlighting their strained relationship and his resourcefulness in the face of adversity. He was perplexed, tightening the knot of the handkerchief with one hand, and inquired about the reasoning behind the fact that the sharpest, most painful material in existence did nothing, as he had anticipated the hound's bite to trigger the agony reflex, but instead, nothing happened, prompting him to ask for an explanation, to which the response was that the hound's fangs never actually reached the obsidian skeleton itself, and it was explained that the structure had partially integrated with his body, with some layers of his skin mutating and hardening to mimic the outer shell of the obsidian material, resulting in a micro-thin covering, precisely 0.000001 millimeters, that absorbed the damage, which left him stunned, as he realized that his plan to let the hound bite him to trigger a berserky state was pointless, and he was disappointed, even considering self-mutilation, such as ripping the skin off his knuckles to punch with a full agony boost. But it was all for nothing, as he was informed that his idea was completely futile, leading to his frustrated groan and rubbing of the side of his head with his left hand. Zeh. With Cyclo, the air was thick with the scent of burned fur and coppery blood as he gazed unflinchingly at the hound's lifeless body, his eyes fixed on the bloody remains, before crouching beside it with practiced precision, pressing the blade back into the ruined chest, this time deeper, carving through muscle and bone without hesitation, cutting towards the center of that strange essence, humming at the edge of his perception until he heard a soft click, and then, embedded deep within the remains, he found it, his fingers reaching inside, curling around something smooth, cold, pulsating faintly like a dying heat. He pulled it out. A core, pitch black, perfectly spherical, about the size of a marble, dark violet threads coiled within it like veins of lightning, swirling with malevolent energy that felt more alive than inert, and just holding the core was giving him a weird sensation. It felt cold at first, but that wasn't all. There was a deep, pulsing resonance spreading through his palm and traveling up his arm. He could feel it not on the surface, but inside himself, a strange and unsettling feeling that seemed to be emanating from the core, as if it was alive and exerting some kind of influence over him. The sensation was both fascinating and terrifying, and he couldn't help but feel drawn to the core, despite the malevolent energy that seemed to be emanating from it, the threads of dark energy swirling within it like living tendrils, seeming to pulse with an otherworldly power that was both captivating and repellent. And as he held the core, he could feel its power coursing through him, a power that seemed to be calling to him, drawing him deeper into its dark and mysterious depths. The core seemed to be exerting some kind of strange influence over him, as if it was trying to communicate with him, or perhaps even control him, and he couldn't help but wonder what secrets it held, and what kind of power it might possess. The core was a mystery, an enigma, and he was determined to uncover its secrets, to understand its power, and to harness it, if possible. The sensation of holding the core was exhilarating and terrifying, a mix of emotions that he had never experienced before, and as he stood there, frozen in awe, he knew that his life would never be the same. The core had changed him. It had awakened something within him, a sense of wonder, a sense of curiosity, and a sense of purpose. He felt a newfound sense of determination, a sense of resolve to unlock the secrets of the core, to understand its power, and to use it for his own purposes. The core was a key to unlocking new possibilities, new powers, and new dimensions, and he was ready to turn it, to see what lay beyond the doorway that it had opened. The core was a gateway, a portal to new and unexplored worlds, and he was eager to step through it, to see what wonders and terrors lay on the other side. The core was a mystery, a puzzle, and he was determined to solve it, to unravel its secrets, and to claim its power for himself. The sensation of holding the core was addictive. It was a feeling that he couldn't get enough of, and he knew that he would do anything to experience it again. To feel the power of the core coursing through his veins, to be one with it, to be a part of it. The core was a part of him now, a part of his being, a part of his soul, and he knew that he would never be able to let it go. It had become a part of him, a part of his essence, a part of his very existence, and he was ready to see where it would take him, to follow its power, to explore its depths, and to unlock its secrets. The core was a journey into the unknown, a journey into the heart of darkness, and he was ready to embark on it, to see where it would lead him, to follow its path, and to uncover its mysteries. It was as if two threads of the same origin had just connected, and he couldn't help but frown as he stared at it. A monster core, strange and bewildering, prompting him to mutter to himself, frowning as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Recalling from the novel that monsters actually contained two cores, one being the elemental core, located where their heart should be, and the other being the monster core, buried deep at the center of their chest, with only the elemental core holding value, while the monster core was considered utterly useless, as if the world itself had rejected it, deeming it a waste product, known for being a crystallized concentration of a monster's life essence, a chaotic blend of instinct, hate, and wild energy, nothing stable, nothing usable. Always dark in color, black, murky crimson, or sometimes a deep, sickly violet, often with strange swirling threads or purple tendrils running through them, a truly enigmatic and perplexing entity, sparking a deep sense of fascination and intrigue as he struggled to comprehend the nature and significance of this mysterious monster core. They formed naturally in magical beasts, usually right in the center of their chest, but even with how important they were to the beasts themselves, this world had no use for them, and yet they were crucial to monsters, as these cores weren't just a weakness, they were also a strength, allowing monsters to consume them to evolve to the next rank, absorb them, and gain the characteristics or traits of the beast the core came from, which was one of the secrets to how monsters grew stronger over time, revealed in the midst of the novel. But for humans, and nearly all other creatures, they were worthless, due to many reasons, including incompatibility with the natural system of this world, as no one, not scholars, researchers, or even divine healers could determine what kind of energy existed inside these cores, which was unstable, wild, and completely non-mana, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't even detect a trace of identifiable mana, or if it even was that, as attempts to extract that energy failed, attempts to refine it failed, and attempts to study it in depth often ended in disaster because the cores were volatile, and mishandling them during experiments could cause them to explode, sometimes catastrophically, which is why most people avoided them entirely. It wasn't worth the risk. But sometimes, if a high-ranking core was discovered, it would be hidden or locked away, not because anyone could utilize it, but because if another monster were to consume it, they might gain a massive boost in strength, or worse, trigger a rank evolution. That is, if it didn't explode, as these cores were strange, dangerous, and unpredictable objects. Perhaps they weren't entirely useless. Maybe the people of this world just lacked the necessary methods to harness their power, with no institutional knowledge, no refining techniques, and no recognized ways to repurpose them. Most researchers had already given up, perceiving monster cores as anomalies, not resources or weapons, but rather cursed relics of unstable magic. Much like how people started to view rocks on the side of pathways. However, as he gazed down at the core in his hand, he felt different. The resonance, the way it pulsed and vibrated faintly, he could feel it echoing with something inside him. Something that shouldn't be possible. It wasn't just humming. The core seemed to be emanating a unique energy that was somehow resonating with him, a sensation that defied explanation. And this inexplicable connection sparked a sense of wonder and curiosity within him. As he stood there, mesmerized by the core's gentle vibrations, he began to ponder the possibilities. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to these mysterious objects than met the eye, and he felt an overwhelming urge to uncover the secrets that lay hidden within, to explore the uncharted territories of this enigmatic world, and to push beyond the boundaries of what was thought to be possible. It was calling to him, and for a moment, he could swear he felt warmth spreading through his veins from the core, as if it was beneficial, as if his dark genius, his cursed talent, was resonating with it, whispering that it belonged to him, that it could be used by him, that it was meant for him, and he asked, his voice low, eyes still fixed on the strange stone in his hand, "System, are you explaining what is happening, even though in the whole novel plot, these monster cores were never brought to use?" To which the system admitted, "I didn't have any idea either. Host, but after deep analysis, all this time you held that core, I've come to a conclusion, and it's pretty surprising. Actually, this core contains dark mana that is entirely unaffiliated with the white faction spectrum, which means it's a dark faction item," and he responded with a surprised tone, "Really?" As the system revealed the shocking truth about the mysterious core, Raziel's eyes flickered, a faint spark passing through them as a sudden realization seemed to dawn on them, but they quickly countered with a question, recalling a previous conversation. "Didn't you confirm that in this world, there's nothing of the dark faction I can use? You said this world is completely aligned with the white faction. Wasn't that the reason I could never absorb mana, never use aura, not even progress in swordsmanship?" The words spilled out in a hurried manner, seeking clarification, and in response, the other party acknowledged, "Yes, I did say that, but you should remember something important. The monster's origin was never revealed in the novel's plot. Even at the end, all we knew was that there were different channels, dimensional rifts, gates, forbidden areas, and such, always kept mysterious. They were only described as dangerous places filled with all kinds of monsters, almost endless in number, and sometimes capable of breaking into civilian areas and causing chaos if not handled properly. But they also brought opportunities and profit. And so, naturally, I wasn't aware back then either. But now, after deep thinking, I can guess whatever places these monsters came from, their originations must contain dark mana and dark type energy. And these monster cores, they can be beneficial for you, just like elemental cores work for others. This also explains why people in this world have never been able to identify this energy. They're all born of the white faction, and as a result, they literally cannot perceive this hidden, formless dark mana due to its very own unique nature. Raziel stood there, absorbing the system's words in silence. His expression was unreadable, but his thoughts raced like a storm inside his head. After what felt like a long moment of contemplation, he finally spoke. "So," he said, "you mean, like how others get advantages from elemental cores, I can get something similar from monster cores?" His voice remained calm and measured, but there was a flicker of expectation in his eyes. He was clearly deep in thought. Perhaps now he'd need to alter some of his plans. The response came, "Though I can't yet predict what kind of benefits you'll get until you try it, I can confidently say this energy is not harmful to you. In fact, I believe your talents are already resonating with it." Raziel's eyes sparkled with a hint of excitement as he considered the possibilities. His mind was racing with the potential implications of this newfound discovery, and he was eager to explore the benefits of this dark mana. The air was thick with anticipation as Raziel stood there, weighing his options and contemplating his next move. The silence was palpable, but it was clear that Raziel's thoughts were a million miles away as he delved deeper into the mysteries of this hidden energy. Sync minutes through immigration. The absolute DAC genius was a no-brainer, but the DAC resonance was what really mattered, and it stated that it automatically absorbs and resonates with all kinds of DAC energy, which caught Raziel's attention, his eyes narrowing slightly as his fingers curled a little tighter around the core, so he paused. His eyes still fixed on the sphere, pulsing faintly with dackness in his palm, and he asked, his voice low and cautious, but with an underlying edge of restrained anticipation, if that meant he could directly absorb the DAC mana inside the core, make it his, without needing methods, rituals, or anything like what mages and experts use to draw from elemental cores. And the system responded with absolute certainty, explaining that, in fact, most of the methods used by practitioners in this world only allow for partial extraction, with basic to intermediate uses barely able to absorb 2% to 35% of the core's energy, which made Raziel's question all the more significant as he wondered if he could bypass all that and directly tap into the core's power. High tide techniques that were reserved for nobles or duke houses might raise it to 50% or 60%, but even then, those techniques are extremely rare and heavily guarded, whereas the protagonist's greatest cheat was being able to absorb 99% of elemental core energy due to his divine bloodline. Specifically, the sun god's legacy and the purest stain of dragon bloodline, but the host is even more special in this context. As their talents don't require a method, they bypass the entire need for it, allowing them to absorb the core automatically, with no effort or cost, and not partially, but entirely, with 100% of the dark mana contained within the core becoming theirs, which leaves Raziel blinking, then slowly, mechanically nodding with a stone-cold expression. But deep inside, he is screaming, roaring, finally having something that is truly his, not denied, not locked away, saying it's not for him because it's a light faction. Something meant for him, and this realization sparks an intense emotional response within him. He remained calm, having long mastered the art of silent celebration, but his eyes drifted down to a specific line, and the skill descriptions burned into his mind, which read that monsters and corrupted creatures might mistake the holder of this talent as one of their own to submit. And his gaze narrowed as his brain quickly clicked through the implications, leading him to murmur to himself and consider the fact that monsters, like the dark-coded ones, with their dimensional rifts and unknown origins, should be part of the dark faction, which made him wonder why the monster had attacked him in the first place, since it should have recognized him and been submissive or even friendly. And he asked this with a flicker of anticipation, maybe hoping he'd found one more cheat, something to make things even sweeter. The system conceded, its tone somewhat more reserved this time, that it didn't have a concrete answer, but it could certainly hazard a guess, suggesting that the monster's extremely low intelligence could be a contributing factor, or perhaps the individual's strength was still too low. Maybe they hadn't yet triggered the submission conditions, and it was also plausible that these monsters weren't purely of the dark faction, but rather of hybrid origin, emphasizing that these were merely assumptions. Yet all of them were valid, prompting a soft click of the tongue from Raziel, who sighed internally, his shoulders relaxing slightly as he came to the realization that it wasn't going to be as easy as he had hoped, and he was getting ahead of himself. It seemed, as he muttered to himself, I see. His expectations somewhat tempered by the system's words, which, while not providing a clear answer, did offer some possible explanations for the situation at hand. He had stumbled upon something entirely unexpected today, something that embodied immense power and authenticity, and for the first time in 16 years, he felt like he had been handed the key to a locked door, which necessitated cautious movement, as this was not the moment to rush. So he inquired finally, his voice neutral, concealing the internal fire that was building behind his eyes. Should he absorb it? To which the system responded flatly, it's your choice. Clearly distancing itself, not wanting to be held responsible in case things went wrong. And this response, in itself, made him pause, albeit only for a brief moment, as the system's reluctance to take responsibility was palpable. Yet he didn't let it deter him, his thoughts still racing with the possibilities. The system's cautionary stance only seemed to underscore the potential risks and benefits of his decision, leaving him to ponder the implications of his choice. As he stood at the threshold of this newfound discovery, weighing his options carefully, the system's words still echoing in his mind, a reminder of the uncertain path that lay ahead, and the importance of proceeding with caution, his heart still racing with anticipation, as he contemplated the potential consequences of his actions. The system's response lingering in the air, a stark reminder of the gravity of his decision, and the need to exercise restraint even as his instincts urged him to push forward, to unlock the secrets that lay hidden, and to seize the opportunities that this newfound power presented, all while navigating the treacherous landscape of uncertainty, where one misstep could have far-reaching consequences. And the system's warning, though subtle, was a clear reminder of the need for vigilance and the importance of careful consideration, as he stood poised on the brink of a new era. One that was fraught with danger, yet filled with promise, and the system's words, though few, had spoken volumes about the nature of the choice that lay before him and the potential outcomes that awaited him, depending on the path he chose to take. Well, whatever, he muttered under his breath, not like he could stop himself now, as all this time while holding the core, his body had been screaming, trembling, hungry for it, like an addict denied a fix for too long. But he had restrained himself, clamped down that urge until now. Now that after the system's explanation, he had context and gave himself the permission, now he could act. So he said, "System, how do I absorb it?" And the system's voice was calm but almost eerie now, saying, "Just let your body do what it's trying to do already. Lean into that feeling. Follow it. Your body is starving for this." It's finally found the source after 16 years of thirst, and Raziel's eyes fluttered shut as he let go. The restraint that had been clamping down deep inside him loosened, and all at once it surged. Suddenly, the core in his palm responded, and a faint hiss filled the air as inky black gas began to leak, smoke-like, sinister and alive from the core's surface, curling and spiraling upwards in delicate tendrils, dancing like it had a mind of its own. Then it moved, the smoke slithering into his palm as if pulled by some unseen force, like a vacuum had opened up inside him, drawing it in. His fingers twitched, and then the sensation hit. Cold, intensely cold, like ice water flooding beneath his skin, rushing up through his veins. His entire arm went numb for a heartbeat, then pulsed as the mana shot upward, invading every inch of his bloodstream. It traveled through his shoulders, shot across his chest, and settled low in his stomach area. Right below his sternum, his breath hitched. He wouldn't lie, not even to himself. It felt like euphoria, like his very soul had been set on fire and cooled in the same instant. The sensation was intoxicating. Pleasure, power, relief. It felt like a divine itch being scratched for the very first time, and the combination of these feelings was almost overwhelming, as the cold, dark energy coursed through his body, leaving him breathless and wanting more. The sensation was so intense that it was almost too much to bear, but at the same time, it was exhilarating, like a rush of adrenaline, and he could feel his heart pounding in his chest as the mana continued to flow through him, filling him with a sense of power and strength. And he knew that he was experiencing something truly unique and special, something that few others had ever experienced. And the feeling of it was almost indescribable, but it was definitely something that he would never forget. He could have groaned, as it felt just right. But then a loud notification slammed into his consciousness, proclaiming congratulations to the host for absorbing a D-grade monster core with a 3rd rank and successfully absorbing dark mana at 100% rate, unlocking a new affinity known as Shadow Affinity, albeit a very light one. And the system repeated the congratulations for absorbing the D-grade monster core and the successful absorption of dark mana, also announcing that a new affinity had been unlocked and the host's mana stat had been updated, changing from F to E+, prompting the system to congratulate the host once again for finally upgrading the mana stat, its cold and mechanical voice echoing with an eerie finality, causing Raziel's breath to catch for a moment as digital panels hovered before his eyes, a thin grin creeping across his face as he muttered, "Good?" His fingers curling as a faint pulse of dark energy flickered over his palm, and the status window confirmed the update from F to E+, indicating that he had actually done it, achieving for the first time since awakening in this cursed world of white mana, a rise in his mana stat, and he felt a sense of accomplishment, finally seeing the results of his efforts, and the system's notifications continued to echo in his mind, a reminder of his progress and the new abilities he had unlocked, all of which served as a testament to his growth and determination in this strange and challenging world. A breakthrough was achieved, albeit a small one, but the satisfaction was short-lived as something didn't feel quite right. A frown tugged at his brow as he studied the floating notifications again, his instincts flaring, and something was off, his eyes narrowing. He tilted his head, saying aloud in a sharp tone, "System, on what basis did my stat increase? Specify your confusion. Host, you said I absorbed 100% of the core, right?" and that beast was a third-rank monster, classified as D grade. He remembered clearly it had D grade mana listed in its status panel. His voice turned colder, more calculating. So why did his mana only rise to E+ instead of straight to D? A brief pause followed. Then the system answered in that familiar neutral tone. You are correct, host. He had said I absorbed 100% of the core, right? And that beast was a third-rank monster, classified as D grade. He remembered clearly it had D grade mana listed in its status panel. His confusion and frustration evident as he questioned the system's logic, seeking a clear explanation for the discrepancy in his stat increase. The system's response was awaited with bated breath as the host sought to understand the reasoning behind his mana, only rising to E+ instead of the expected D grade. The air was thick with anticipation as the host's eyes remained narrowed, awaiting the system's response. The silence was palpable as the host's mind racing with questions, and the system's answer would be crucial in clearing up the confusion and providing a sense of clarity and understanding to the host's dilemma. Under odd circumstances, absorbing a D-grade core would elevate one to D-grade mana. However, due to a certain individual's unique talent, the amount of mana required to advance each stat is 10 times greater than that of a normal being, which prompted a strong reaction as the person's eyes twitched and they muttered in dismay. Wait, what? 10 times? How is that a talent? It sounds more like a curse. To which the system responded as if it hadn't noticed the rising fury in the voice, stating it is not a disadvantage, although it requires 10 times more mana to rank up. The internal mana pool, the very vessel that contains energy, is 10 times larger as well, and this increase in capacity will allow the body to retain higher purity, greater density, and an eventual affinity for complex mana manipulations that lesser beings can never comprehend. The individual ran a hand through their hair, exhaling deeply, and sought clarification. So, I hold more mana than a regular D rank, but my stat just says E+, to which the response was correct. The individual now contains more mana than a standard E rank would possess, even approaching D grade in volume. However, until the vessel is completely filled, the stat classification will not update, and a slow realization dawned on the person as they began to understand the implications of their unique situation. He wasn't weak, he was just built differently, a realization that sparked a thoughtful tone in his voice, now low and muttered, as he repeated to himself, I see, and a faint smile crept onto his face as he acknowledged that the system wasn't just about numbers, but about potential. And with that understanding, he decided to play the long game, but his gaze soon shifted to another notification, one that had caught his attention and made his heart skip a beat the moment he first saw it. And as he read it again, his eyes widened in surprise. The notification read, Shadow Affinity, very light, and a message accompanied it, stating that just as elemental cores grant mana and strengthen a matching elemental affinity, monster cores can do the same, which was very surprising, even to him, the host, and Raziel's eyebrows furrowed as he stared at the floating notification, his expression a mix of confusion and intrigue, as he blinked and uttered a simple, Huh? Affinity? His mind struggling to grasp the implications of this new information. As the revelation hit him, his lips parted slightly, confusion flaring in his chest, because, apparently, Shadow was an actual affinity, and he had never read anything like this in the novel, which sparked a flurry of thoughts in his mind, and then another thought slammed into him, making him exclaim, Hold on! Didn't they say elemental cores can only strengthen existing affinities? That if someone doesn't already possess a matching attribute, the core would be useless, to which he received a confirmation, yes, that is correct, and Raziel's breath hitched, his heartbeat accelerating, as he pondered the implications. Then, this notification unlocked meant he was saying he already had this affinity. It wasn't granted by the monster core, just awakened, and there was a long silence before the system finally responded, affirmative. He had always possessed Shadow Affinity. It was simply locked which left him stunned and wondering about the truth behind his abilities. Raziel stood frozen, his mind reeling as he pieced things together like shattered glass falling into place. And it dawned on him that he had been carrying this hidden power all along, never knowing it existed, and it was understandable that he wouldn't have known since the world was dominated by the White faction, where all elemental affinities were monopolized by the holy spectrum of earth, fire, water, wind, ice, lightning, wood, and light, all of which were aligned with the White faction. And he had been told that he couldn't use any of these affinities, but now he was faced with the shocking truth, and he muttered, "Damn it," feeling an almost childlike awe breaking through his usual calm demeanor, as he thought to himself that it had been a day full of surprises, and he had thought that all he was doing was collecting some monster core scraps, but now he looked down at his hands, which were still faintly tingling with residual mana, and he realized that this affinity, which belonged to the Dark faction, was one of the elemental affinities that was unique to it, specifically Shadow, and this revelation left him stunned and trying to process this new information as he struggled to come to terms with the fact that his entire understanding of himself and his place in the world had been turned upside down. Raziel's eyes widened in astonishment as he struggled to process the revelation, his mind racing with the implications of the Dak faction having its own elemental affinities, a fact that had been kept hidden from him, leaving him to ponder why he had never been told. And his chest tightened as he grappled with the realization that he had been mourning his inability to wield fire, ice, or lightning, when in truth, the answer lay far deeper, and he recalled the system's words, that he had a shadow affinity locked inside him, which sparked a sense of anticipation and hope within him as he took a breath and asked, his voice rising with excitement, if he had only this one affinity or if there were more, his hunger to know the truth finally surfacing, and for the first time, he felt a sense of optimism, his eagerness to uncover the secrets of his elemental affinities, leaving him almost breathless as he waited with bated breath for the answer, his entire being yearning to understand the true extent of his powers and the possibilities that lay before him, now that the veil of ignorance had been lifted, and he could see a glimmer of light illuminating the path ahead, a path that was filled with promise and uncertainty, yet he was ready to embark on this journey, to discover the truth about himself and the hidden abilities that lay within him, waiting to be unleashed. It appears that a rather astonishing revelation has befallen a certain individual, prompting a train of thought that meanders through the realm of probability and luck, as he ponders the unlikely event of having vanquished a monster solely by chance, only to discover that this monster shared the same affinity as himself, a coincidence that seems too remarkable to be mere happenstance, and thus he scoffs at the notion, attributing his generally abysmal luck to the improbability of such an encounter, suggesting that if he possessed only one affinity, the likelihood of crossing paths with a monster that shared this affinity would be infinitesimally small. Unless, of course, a particular condition were met, specifically that he possessed the absolute genius talent, which would naturally render him compatible with every elemental affinity, a fact that suddenly stops everything in its tracks, leaving him staring blankly ahead before erupting into uncontrollable laughter. As the absurdity and irony of his situation finally dawns on him, and for the first time, the title of genius, previously a constant reminder of the capricious nature of fate, feels genuinely deserved, prompting him to demand a listing of the specific Dak affinities to which he has access, his excitement and eagerness palpable as he awaits the revelation of the mysteries that his unique talent holds.